Every life has a story, and every story is worth sharing. Your story, my story, and our story speak of victory and defeat, joy and sorrow, resilience and vulnerability. They are not just our story, they are Christ's story in us. They are Kingdom Stories from Down Under.
Well, good evening, Nathaniel here from Kingdom Stories from Down Under. Tonight I have a special guest who's had a massive legacy passed on to her. And I don't want to give away too much because this will just come through as we share the story tonight. But we had the great opportunity last night at church here to witness a beautiful production that our guest was involved in, and I'm sure she'll speak more about it tonight. We've also heard her husband's testimony here, and tonight, without further ado, let me introduce to you Carol Aitken. Welcome, Carol. We had your husband here before, a few weeks ago, but Lindsay. Now we wanted to grab your story as well. And last night we had the beautiful production of your grandfather's story as well. Powerful legacy, eh?
It's pretty sturdy, yeah.
Do you realize what
do.
shoulders you've walked on?
I do.
You were carried on?
There are times, and there were times particularly when I was making that production that...
We can give it away now to people. It's called...
A Drop in a Bucket.
A Drop in a Bucket. And it's the Mount Margaret story.
It's the Mount Margaret story, yeah. There were times when I was making it that I felt the burden of responsibility of
honouring
their
the story.
Yes, very much. Everyone kind of goes, oh, wow, legacy, because my parents were also pioneer missionaries. But anyway, that's not what this is about. But there's really good stuff in that, we have, that's our legacy,
yes.
Like that's my thing. And so it's really well, I'm proud of them, and I'm so stoked that, I got to learn from them. And this man who started this legacy taught me how to play chess, so yeah. You know what I mean? He was just granddad for me, And but the burden of it, there's another side of it, is the burden of that legacy of like where our family, the kids have inherited this photographic history and documents and diaries and,
it's just phenomenal. I mean, most people don't keep journals, let alone all that. We rely more on Facebook to keep our timeline.
Yeah, well, I mean, back in the day that Facebook didn't exist, you see.
Yeah, but I'm just saying how diligent they were in documenting all of it.
They rode horses and carts and camels.
Time was a lot slower back then.
It was different.
It wasn't performance-based, it was more life-based, it was relationship-based.
I think one of the reasons why they kept such good records is they were faith missionaries, which meant that, like people would send them money.
And they had to
and they
honor.
really needed to honour that. So they were very careful about
Write
the way.
Reports.
And they had to, they'd do deputation and trips over, back to Melbourne because that's where they were from. They would go back over there and
present.
And they call it furlough, but really they worked the whole time.
They were raising funds so they can last another 6 months, 8 months.
Yeah.
Now let's take it where it started with you. So we were talking a little bit about your grandfather and the production of A Drop in a Bucket. Where were you born?
Okay, so I was born in Noangarup, which is in the southwest of Western Australia.
And biggest town nearby?
Katanning, Albany. Yeah. Albany's down the coast, 100 k's down. It's 250 k's sort of southeast, sort of ish of Perth. Yeah.
Sheep country?
Yes, it's wheat and sheep.
Wheat and sheep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And really merino country, farms in our area, would win the golden fleece for the nation and stuff.
So your parents were farmers?
No, my parents were missionaries.
Missionaries, okay.
So I grew up in. My dad was the principal of a Bible college, which he.
There was a Bible college in
pioneered.
Noanga?
Yes, there was.
Wow.
For Aboriginal people.
So there's a strong Aboriginal community.
Well, there was. Yeah, there was. Yeah,
So your grandfather was a missionary.
He started Mount Margaret, and my dad was a missionary who started the Noanga Bible Training Institute. And I was born the second year that they were there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How many siblings?
I have 5, and the eldest, Peter, who you met on screen last night, he's 10 years older than me. So he was 8 when they left Mount Margaret. So
he still has memories of Mount Margaret.
I mean, he went to school. Like all those guys that he was talking to in the movie, he went to school with them.
Kids.
I mean, I knew them because I went back as an adult with Lindsay and lived in Leonora. So I know them more kind of like a generation later.
Yes.
But he was at school. Yeah. He went to school, yeah.
And in Noanga, how long were you there for?
I was there. I basically grew up there 15, 16 years. So I lived it. But
was there a school there?
Oh yeah, it's a town. I went to the Noanga Senior High School, which went to 3rd year.
Okay.
And if you wanted to do year 11 and 12, you had to go to Katanning or Perth.
Okay.
Back in the day, I think it's still that way actually. And we lived on a property which was the institute was about 3.5 k's out of town.
Mm-hmm.
And the mission was over the back of where we were, and that was UAM, the same mission that Mount Margaret was in.
What does UAA stand for?
United Aborigines Mission.
Mm-hmm.
It was very large back in those days, and yeah, that's how
Life was fun as a child?
Well, it was different. I didn't realise that my childhood was really unusual until I was an adult. For me, it was normal. I mean, you just you live your life.
But it was embedded in the community very strongly. Always with people.
I grew up in the middle of a residential Aboriginal Bible college, and realised that people looking in from the outside would have thought that was very strange.
Yeah.
But yeah.
On the inside, it was natural.
And on the inside, it felt like it was all I knew. I didn't know anything else. Yeah.
Were you good at school?
No, I was naughty.
Oh.
Yeah, I was a naughty kid.
You don't look the type.
Yeah. I felt I had a very strong spirit of rebellion.
Some of the things that you got in trouble for?
Oh, all sorts of things, smoking up behind the sports shed and fighting and just, normal, kids stuff, yeah. Yeah, I never wagged. I wagged once and I was so bored I didn't do it again. Didn't wag school.
Were you good at sport?
I actually liked school, really. Yeah, even though I kind of didn't like the academic side of it, but I liked the social side of school.
Yeah, being with mates.
Being at school.
Was it a big school, like enough for one class of each, or you had joint classes?
There was. We were kind of. It's a weird thing. We were kind of post baby boom. So the years, like for my older siblings, there would be 2 classes of one each year. So by the time I came along,
full class.
We were just one class.
Yeah. Back
to one class again, and so. Yeah, there was generally one teacher per year, and there was like a classroom that was for each year. And grade 7 used to be in the primary school.
And the church was within the institute, or you would go to town?
No, we went to town. We went to the Baptist church in town.
And that was about 3 k's away?
Yeah, it was about 3.5 k's away.
Driving or walking?
Driving.
Always driving.
You could walk across another farmer's paddock to get there. It was an achievable distance.
Sure.
I ended up walking that distance quite a few times because I used to get left behind all the time.
Too late, not getting ready?
Oh, because we went to we'd go to church. Mum and Dad, we drove the green van. Any person who was a student or from Noangra
Could get in.
would know this van, the green van. It was a Morris green van, and we used to go. It was our car.
Yes.
And we used to take the students in the car all the time. So it was, everyone just jumped in and off we went, sort of thing. And then, but when we were going home, because I was the littlest, they'd all pile in the car and
You'd be left behind.
I'd be left behind. And yeah, it happened a lot of times, yeah.
So you just walk across the
I walked home. And sometimes I would go around to the minister's house and they'd make a phone call. When I was really little, they'd make a phone call and
to be picked up.
Yeah, they go, so we'll have our lunch, and the minister would give me lunch and stuff.
That's nice. Small community.
Yeah, it's.
And at 15, what did you do? You came to town or boarding school?
No, at 15, Mum and Dad left the Bible Institute, and Dad became the state secretary for the mission. I think. So we moved to Perth, and I went to.
And somebody took over the mission?
Yes. The Bible Institute was taken over by a man called Ronnie Williams, who's quite famous in Aboriginal circles.
So he was handed to the Aboriginals? They ran it?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes. And then not long after that, yes, it was given to AEF, Aboriginal Evangelical Fellowship, which was an Aboriginal mission that was run by Aboriginal people. So yes, there was a big official handover and everything. Yes.
And he came to live in town and run the head office.
You're going to cut that out, aren't you?
No, we're not cutting anything out. Just carry on. Carol, this is real life.
Not folding my arms.
That's fine. You can fold your arms.
Yeah, no, it's no. Anyway. Dad was the state secretary, and so I moved and I did the second half of year 10 at Kent Street Senior High School in town. In
Bentley.
Yeah, in South. It's not Bentley, is it?
Oh, maybe Kensington.
I don't know. Kensington, is it still? I don't know. It's on the border, around there, yeah. Yeah. And then
where was the office of the mission?
Okay, so the head office was 80 Lansdowne Road in South Perth, which was the headquarters. And the reason why it was there was because it used to be a Mish Kid home. So the missionaries from all the missionaries' kids used to all go there.
Yeah.
And my Auntie Margaret, the lady who wrote the book,
yes,
they were there. So Uncle Keith was the state secretary, and he bought that house, and they had a children's home there.
Wonderful.
Yes, and Peter went there. He was there, and he did year 11 and 12 at Kent Street, same as me, but I didn't finish.
Oh, you didn't finish?
No, I did everything the wrong way around.
Did you go to TAFE?
I didn't graduate. I left at the end of halfway through year 11 and went to business college. And I passed that, but I hated it because
what did you study?
Typing and shorthand and all that stuff. And I'd sit there and I'd go,
I don't want to do this.
I don't want to do this. I want to be the person on the other side of the desk telling their person what to write.
Yes.
Yeah, so that didn't appeal to me at all. So I left there. Once I graduated, I didn't become a secretary at all. And I didn't want to be a typist. I didn't want to do any of that.
Yes.
So I went and started getting jobs. I just got, what was it? I worked in town I worked in Bunnings for a while, and I worked in, this china and glassware shop. I don't even know what it was called anymore.
Australian fine china.
It's a long way. Yeah, it was fine china and jewellery and all this beautiful stuff. Nice. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what I was doing in the middle of all of that, but that's where I ended up.
You had a job.
And it was a job. And, so I did all of those sorts of things
Boys?
For a while. Sorry?
Boys?
Boys, so boys was an interesting thing. I was such a tomboy. I didn't do boyfriends.
Yeah.
They were my friends.
Yeah, by buddies.
So I was in friend zone with them all the time. Yeah. I did like a boy, but yeah, he was just like, he was actually in love with my friend.
As
It
it
was
happens.
devastating. Yeah, no, it was fun. Yeah, but, you know, I mean, so I didn't really do
And church
boyfriends
life?
that well. Church,
Were you still going to church in your late teens?
yeah, like I did. I really didn't get to move out of home, really, because I did this not being academic and not going to uni or whatever sort of thing, and having these little jobs that weren't going to provide a living for
Yes.
anybody really. So yeah, it was much more comfortable for me to stay home. So I did, and I stayed at church, and I used to. I actually just shared this the other day with one of the guys in the worship team at church. I've been in worship teams, you know, for forever.
Singing or playing?
I sing harmony.
Okay.
That's my thing. And I said,
Now you know, Paul.
yeah, and I said, you know, because we have the drummers and some of the musicians and stuff. You know, they're out on the tiles, you know, Saturday night, and they sort of turn up and they're all bleary-eyed. And I said, "Don't worry about it. Keep them in, keep them in, keep them in," because music was the thing that kept me in the church. Yeah. It really was. And Mum used to go and, you know, she'd speak at all these ladies' meetings and women's conventions and stuff like that. She did a lot of that. And she used to take me and we'd sing duets.
Nice.
I'd sing with her. And, yeah, I mean, I think that can... So, yes, I've got a real heart for the young uns in the church that have musical ability.
Beautiful.
Because, you know, because there'd be people that are going, oh, you know, they're at the forefront of the battle and stuff and they need to be with God. And I'm going, yeah, nah. They are the forefront of the battle. And, yeah, we've got to keep them involved because that's what's going to keep them involved.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was heavily involved in the church in my teenage years. In fact, throughout all my life, I always, and it did keep me on the straight and narrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though, you know, you fall aside, but you come back on because...
Yeah, well, your heart might not necessarily be in the right place for a while, but
physically you're still there.
Physically you're still there.
You're still connected.
And you're still under, you know, like you're under that banner and mantle and, you know, you're getting the teaching and, you know, like, yeah, it's wonderful.
When did you meet Lindsay?
Lindsay was in the youth group that I attended at Perth Christian Centre. When we went there, he was in the youth group and he was one of the, you know, the leaders and the guitarist and, you know, the legend sort of guy. And I was this little
cool guy.
I was this little snotty-nosed year 10 who didn't want to be at church. Yeah, that was way back then. But interesting enough, church circles are so small. The first time we actually met was at Corrigan Camp. My church went to the camp, and Perth Christian Centre went to the camp, and they had this volleyball competition because Lindsay's a bit of a sportsman. They had him planted right in the middle to pick up the tips and flicks and, you know, all of that. And so the Perth Christian Centre team did really well.
Of course.
And I remember looking across and going, who does that bloke think he is staying in the middle? But it wasn't him. It was them making him stay there, and they just were rotating around him, you know. And I remember him from that.
Yes.
And I would have been about
15, 16.
13.
Oh, that young.
Yeah, that young. But I mean, you know, who knows? But I remember him from that. But I mean, yeah, like.
And then you connected with him in town.
No, and then we got, when we moved to Perth, we used to do that. The church used to do, youth group used to go and do what do you even call them now? Like we'd do these like services, outreach things to Sister Kate's, which was the Aboriginal children's home in Perth. And we'd go there and Lindsay played the guitar and I'd do all the actions and sing up the front and stuff like that. And we became really good friends. Once again, friend zone. And he thought of me the same, you know. I mean, he was 10 years older than me. I mean, I was just this little, you know, whatever, missionary's kid, and Mum and Dad ended up taking over the youth group, and Mum became Lindsay's counsellor. He'd come around and he'd sit on the chair in the kitchen. Mum would be making the tea and he'd be sitting there talking to her and sharing his heart, and I was around the house. I wasn't in there, I can tell you. And there was a lot of the youth group used to do that.
Yes.
So Lindsay wasn't the only one. But then he went to Bible college.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working at this stage. Anyway, I had this experience where I was sitting there complaining to my friends about how terrible my parents were because they wouldn't let me go anywhere or do anything, and I felt all imprisoned, and, everything that Dad, everything I wanted to do, Dad would say no. And so I didn't, I just felt like this. And the guys that I was talking to were like, that you don't realise how lucky you are. Like your parents actually care about you.
Yeah.
And I was like,
you
what?
see it and I don't?
Yeah. No, it was just like looking at the world from a completely different angle. I mean, I didn't realise that I really had loving, caring parents who really wanted the best for me, and all I could see was what they wouldn't let me do.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was like an epiphany. Anyway, we had that, and I wasn't very upset with this guy. And it was the boyfriend of my best friend, and and he'd obviously had quite a traumatic childhood, and he could see that I hadn't really, I'd just been cared for properly and loved. And I was sitting on the steps of the cathedral in St George's Terrace, and I prayed to God, and I said, God, if what I have is so good, I'm going to give you a year. I'm going to go to Bible college for a year, and if I haven't found what I'm looking for after a year, I'm out.
I'll quit.
I'm out, gone. Anyway, I turned up at Bible college the next day, and Lindsay was there.
Oh.
He was so excited to see me there, his little sister, And
what's this Bible college called?
Perth Bible College.
Okay.
Yeah. And
was it still here in Carol, or was it somewhere else?
It was in Mount Lawley then.
Okay.
Yeah. Before it went to Carol, but yes, the same place. We used to have quite a lot of students back then, and there was quite a few students from our youth group as well. So our youth group, there would have been about 6 people from the youth group who were actually in Bible college.
Yeah.
Lindsay was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I turned up there and started studying, and I by about the April, which wasn't very long, I got sick and I went home, and I was lying at home in bed, and because I was a matchmaker, born matchmaker.
Ah.
He used to lie there, she'd really suit him and he'd really suit her. And I actually did things about that. I've got quite a few successful marriages.
Yes. I'm guilty of that too.
Funny, hey? Oh no, it's between those people really. I just help them along,
Give them a nudge.
Yeah, or just a bit of confidence sometimes is all that's required. And so they're not going to reject you. They're,
Yeah.
And I got to Lindsay, and I was going, who is it? And I was going through a lot of the girls who were there who would have been perfectly good partners for him, and I thought, I would be jealous of anybody who was with him. And I realised that I'd actually fallen in love with him without realising it.
Ah.
So I went back to college, and because we used to study on the end of the same bench.
Uh-huh.
We weren't, the third years were the ones that got the proper booths and stuff. And back in the day, the first years we'd have to study in the library, or and we'd have to pack up after we worked every day and go and put our stuff in a box, such sort of thing. Anyway, so we studied on the end. He'd been there, he was second year. But yeah, we used to study on the end of the desk, and he was actually really helpful because his Bible knowledge was far better than mine, even though I'd grown up in a Bible college.
That's good.
Yeah. So, yeah, I found him quite helpful. Anyway, I wrote this little note and I wrote, "I love you," and handed it across the bench. And he looked at me and he was like, he said, "What does that mean?" And I was like, "What you want it to mean." Anyway, that's how we got together.
And
then we started dating, and we went out. Oh, this was a funny thing. We went out and we did a date,
yes.
right? Because we were going out together, sort of thing. And then we got there and we were like, this is really stupid, because we were all strained and trying to be proper with each other, and we knew each other too well already. And so we said, look, you date a person to get to know them, but we already know you, so we don't need to date. We'll just do life. And so we did. And then because we were at Bible college, we weren't officially allowed to have a relationship. So we were very obedient and didn't officially have a relationship, but, it was very difficult because Mum was his counsellor, so he had a good reason to come around to our house fairly regularly. We were in the same youth group. He was one of the leaders, it was
too much, too messy.
Convenient. And, we did mission trips and stuff, and we did mission trip before I got to Bible college, actually. That was a fun one. But, yeah, we'd do things as groups. So, yeah, we did the right thing. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then did he propose to you? Or?
I actually proposed to him.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, yeah. I worked out that, he'd had a few fallen hopes of from girls, and because he was 30.
Yes.
And or 28, round about there. Anyway, so I thought, I'll just propose to him. So I did, and that was how we proposal.
And your parents were okay with it?
Mum and Dad were okay, and the reason why they were okay with it was because my grandparents,
yes,
Maisie and Rod, there was actually the same amount of years between them as well. Uh-huh. So in my family, it was kind of an acceptable thing to have a 10-year gap. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
There's 9 between Rod and I as well.
Oh, right, yeah. So it's 10, nearly 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, with us. But it's fine. Anyway, and that was it was lovely. And so basically we got engaged this September. So Lindsay finished obviously the year before me because he moved to Leonora and was working in the hospital up there. And we got engaged in September. Hospital? I was just working as a nursing assistant. Okay. Now, he went there because he'd been called to Aboriginal people.
Yes.
And Sadie Canning was the matron, who was the Mount Margaret girl. And he, he was dating me. So, it was Mum's phone call to Sadie was like, give this boy a job sort of thing. Anyway, so, because he was working as a nursing assistant at Shenton Park before he went to Bible college. So it was right down his alley. Anyway, so he went out there for the year. So we got engaged in September and then married like a week after virtually. I graduated.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So when he graduated, we were allowed to be formally dating because he was in Leonora and I was in Perth.
There was enough distance.
Yeah.
To keep you apart.
It was just one of those things, that, yeah. Yeah.
And you had how many children?
We have 2 children, 2 girls, Penelope and Laura. And I think that they would have to be 2 of the best things we've ever done. They are gorgeous, absolutely beautiful women. We brought them up to be independent women, and they've both married great guys, excellent choices, and Penelope has 3 children.
Wow.
And Laura has 4.
Wow, fantastic.
And Pen's been living in on the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, get that right. She's been living on the Sunshine Coast for a couple of years, but they're moving back.
Wow, that's fantastic.
At the end of the year. So they'll both be around the Mandurah kind of area.
That'll be great.
I'm really looking forward to it.
7 grandkids around.
7 grandchildren from 2 daughters. Not bad.
Not bad at all.
Not bad.
Are they in the Lord?
Yes,
That is
both the girls.
most important aspect.
Yeah, I think Linz and I were a good team. I think that part of the reason why the girls are so awesome is because they had Lindsay as a dad and me as a mum. On our own, they would not. I think we really complemented each other.
What did you bring to the table? What did Lindsay bring to the table?
What I brought to the table was, the tasks, the completion, getting, encouragement to get to go to school and get educated and, that sort of stuff. I also, I think, have a skill with communicating effectively with teenagers. As I'm a teacher. And, so high school kids are my... I love them, and it's when people are like, teenagers, they're terrible, but that's exactly when I like them.
Yes.
Yeah. So they
and Lindsay.
Yeah, and I brought that to them, and Lindsay brought that real spiritual passion and love of music. I worked in hospitality for a long time, and so I'd be out in the evenings and stuff. So he would, because he was a truck driver, he would be getting up really early in the morning, so he wanted to go to bed early. So they would have this music hour, and they'd listen to country music, and the girls would have to guess the singer and stuff. And
nice.
So it was usually Johnny Cash. They had about 3 or 4 people that would be, if they said that one. It's a bit like, the questions in Sunday school, if you put your hand up and say Jesus, you're 90% going to get it right, So, Linz, he really gave the girls that a real love of God and passion, that I don't think that I would have been as good at. Yeah. So together, I think we've...
Any challenges you've encountered? Health, family, finances?
Well, we were pretty broke back in the day because Lindsay went and did nursing, and we were surviving on my part-time wage as a waitress. I went full-time for a while there, and meant that I was in the evenings a lot, 5 nights a week just about. And then Linz was driving trucks, and together we kind of just made it through. It was a bit like that. Okay. It was life was a bit tight. And some of it had to do with the fact that during our academic training years, we went to Bible college, and that doesn't really give you a professional job when you graduate. So,
well, it does, but not a money-making job.
Not a money-making job. It does. It gives you lots of jobs, but yes, not a money-making one.
Yeah.
But I'm missionary's kid. I'm pretty used to not having.
Tell me a little bit about a drop in the bucket. Now, this has taken quite a bit of energy and all-consuming energy from both you and Peter, your brother.
Yeah. Well, Peter. The way that happened was Linz and I, how we were living in Leonora for a few years, we ran a youth group up there, and so we got to know the next generation of descendants of Mount Margaret, really, and all their mums were my mum's friends, so they looked after me. They were wonderful. Amazing. I thank the Lord for them. Yes. Regularly, those amazing women. Anyway, we had a youth group there, and we obviously moved away when Lindsay started studying nursing, and then so we were living in Perth. I don't know, it would have been about 10 to 15 years, I suppose. Anyway, we realised. And then we went to Melbourne. I'm really bad with dates. That's
okay.
Lindsay's forte. Me, yeah, it's different. But I'm more words. But so when we got back, yeah, they realised it was 100 years because that since Mount Margaret started, and Linz was talking to Barron, and then they were, we have to do something about it. So he got Daniel, his cousin, to come, and they came over and we formed this committee, and we said, right, we're going to celebrate 100 years. What are we going to do? And we were like, okay, well, and they were like, well, this story can't be forgotten. This is really important story. This is our heritage, rah, rah, rah. And so they said, look, Mr. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Mr. Schenk. So let's do a thing about Mr. Schenk.
Yeah.
And so that's what it started out as. And we started writing that. And I said, look, I can't do this without Peter. Peter's the historian.
Yes.
That's what he's studied. That's his area. And they were like, yep, righto, well, let's get a few others. And so we got Preston as well to join. So that's the basic committee. There's me and Peter and Preston and Daniel and Barron. Mm-hmm. And so there's a committee of 5. And so from that, we decided then we were going to do a film. We were going to go out there and, record and stuff. And then we got back and we used a drop in a bucket to tell the beginning of the story because it's history, thoroughly researched by Auntie Margaret. And so we used that as the basis to tell the story of what happened in the beginning. And then we were like, why don't we just call this a drop in a bucket? We didn't have a name for it. And so we called it a drop in a bucket.
What's the book called?
A Drop in a Bucket.
Oh, the book was called A Drop in a Bucket.
Now, a drop in a bucket, and this is where I need Linz, is a quote from the Bible.
Yes.
Yes. I think it's Isaiah. Something around 40, somewhere around there.
Wow.
So I realise now, Granddad did use, a drop in a bucket is a phrase that he used. Yes. And he used phrases that were from the Bible, and people didn't realise. That was one of them. Because he went through Bible college, of course. Yeah. But, and so, yes, it turned into that. Mm-hmm. And then because we are the custodians to the Granddad's diaries and all the materials that Auntie Margaret used to write A Drop in a Bucket, and the photographs, which is the St. Schenk collection, which is in the Batty Library or the State Library. We had access to all this material, and so to make it into a movie, I had to go back and find photos that were appropriate for it, and that's what took a lot of time. Yeah, that was, and sort of getting the story right and making sure it was in the right sequences. And like right at the end, we had to do a few big things. Like we want to take that chunk there out of there and put it in there. Yeah. And so that was really scary when we did that. And we couldn't have done it without Josh from YWAM or Signet Films, I think it's the name.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wonderful production, and it's worth every ounce of energy. Because it does show a beautiful story of Christ in the outback. Yes. A very successful story.
Yes.
A story that is untold, but fully lived out by so many people whose legacies are just carrying on throughout the city and towns and villages throughout Australia.
Yes.
Which is beautiful. So it's well done. Well done to you and the team.
It was very intentional. We wanted to make sure that we told the truth. Yeah. Because there's a lot of rubbish around. We wanted to tell the truth. And we wanted to make sure that we weren't just being triumphalist, saying, everything was all rosy and it was all wonderful. We wanted to make sure that we had a bit of the real stuff in there. And we touch on issues, political issues of the day.
Yes.
Many of them, actually. I don't really even want to name them now, but they're there.
In the movie. They're in the production.
They're there, and you can see it if you know about the history of Western Australia. what it is. And the other thing, we wanted to make it so that it was, yes, this is Christian, you know, like that was his passion. That was what fired him up. That's what got him up in the morning, you know, every day for 40 years. But we didn't want it to be preachy because Granddad wasn't that type of guy either. He was very passionate about it. He lived out his faith. And,
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well done to you. Well done to the team. And it was an absolute privilege for us to showcase it here at Menorah. And I'm sure
it was our pleasure.
It will go around the country.
Yeah. So the other part of the legacy is that Aboriginal leaders, Aubrey touches on it right at the end where he says, you know, all these people went out into the world from Mount Margaret and they were educated and they were able to go places and do things. And they did. Yes. And their children are doing things. So, Preston's in Canberra this week. Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, Daniel was in Canberra. I mean, these are the committee. Right. That's only just them. There's heaps more, you know.
Well, I'd love to probably showcase this movie. You probably don't know this, but we are traveling a little bit around. We're going to drive from Melbourne back here, and we will stop most likely in a few places. Maybe we can show it in a couple of places.
Absolutely. It would be wonderful if you do that, yeah.
Probably Port Augusta, I'm thinking.
Yeah, Port Augusta, there's a lot of Aboriginal people there.
More in Port Augusta than Port Pirie, so.
If you, not whether it's on camera, if you show it, you need to have somebody who's got some skin in the story.
Yes.
You need to have the Aboriginal Aboriginal people there who know the story
to welcome you in,
and to kind of go, no, this is because politically at the moment there's a lot of people who don't want anyone who's of another culture, any culture, other culture, to be involved in Aboriginal anything.
Yeah.
And
it's sad.
Yeah, it is.
But if you look at the history of Australia, you know, we had the Fijians who came across in Queensland to work in the sugar canes. Then we had the Afghanis who came across to bring the camels across. Yes. You know,
there's actually a really large Afghan Aboriginal community.
Yeah.
In
Australia. And also in the West, we had islanders. We had, you know, from Christmas Island, from, you know, Indonesia.
Yes.
So there's a lot of cross-cultural.
Absolutely.
You know.
Interaction.
But people don't realise that. History tells you that.
Yes.
What's next for you, Carol?
Okay. Well, I continue to do my job at
school.
At school.
So you teach?
I teach 10s, 11s and 12s at Providence Christian College. I'm a food teacher.
Food teacher. Is it that gastronomy or
hospital?
What is it
gastronomy. Of course it is.
It looks like, you know, astronomy.
Food science and technology it's called. And I also teach hospitality, which is another subject, but no one ever realises it's two different subjects. But anyway, yes. But I'm currently teaching, food science and technology. And yes, I call it culinary arts or gastronomy or, you know, whatever. Cooking for most kids.
Great. It's a wonderful skill and it does make them better.
Yes.
You know.
It's a life skill.
Gives them more respect for food as well.
It's a life skill. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Ministry-wise, family-wise?
School, family. I'm just going to enjoy my grandchildren and my children being around.
You're not moving to Mandurah, are you?
Hey? No, I don't think so. I think we're a bit too comfortable in our house right now.
We've got a holiday house there, so you can go
have you?
There.
Oh, great. Oh, okay. We might make a phone call on that one.
It's not finished yet. we laid the slab.
Oh, you've laid the slab. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. With ministry-wise, as far as Children of Mount Margaret Inc. is concerned, we're going to, there's quite a few projects, like this is just the first one. There's quite a few projects that we've got up ahead, and we're going to do a new edition of the book, A Drop in a Bucket, because it's actually out of print. Another thing is the recordings. You used to hear a little bit about the recordings, and you hear some of those recordings. They were taken by Sid Williams, who was a missionary in the same mission. We want to digitise those because they're all on tapes, and they're rapidly disintegrating. So that needs to be done. And another thing, we feel a grave responsibility to make available all the documents around the mission, because it's actually of historical significance to the state.
Birth certificates, data.
Because Grandy started keeping records. For this is a simple example, records of births and deaths of people at Mount Margaret. And at this point I think they weren't registered.
No.
But in the state. So this is it. You know, we're just trying to work out the best possible way to do that. There are other materials, though, that, you know, a lot of people are interested in that are part of their documents collection. It's just like, we'll just do one thing at a time, you know. We want to get a website up and running. It's something that's right outside of my comfort zone, but, you know, we need to find someone who's got some skills in that area.
It takes one night to do it.
Hey?
It takes one night to do it.
Well, we've got a bloke who's going to... No, but it might take that long to set it up, but there's a lot of materials and a lot of building that needs to get done. And so just starting it, that's fine, but, you know, we want to be able to load as we get the thing, you know, stuff done. So that's a very big job. And making the photograph or the digital copies of all the photographs available. That's important because these are the only photographs that are available of the very early days and things. Back in the 1920s, cameras weren't something that was everybody had in those days, you know. And a lot of the photos were originally taken by Grandad because he was wanting to take it so that he could take it on furlough and use it for deputation. So, there's just a lot of photos. And they are also of historical significance. And things like she's meticulous records. She was a meticulous record keeper. The children who were in the children's home, she's got like and the endowment that the mums were getting for their children. It's all written down, and the mum that was getting it, and who the tribal father was, and radi, it's all there.
Beautiful.
Yes.
A lot of work at hand.
Very much.
Messing like a drop in a bucket, but this drop in a bucket is a massive drop, an ocean.
It's kind of like a wave, but yes. So the film is just like the first of
a lot of
projects,
But I think it's a massive achievement. And it, as you said, you were carrying the burden, and there is a release with that burden. However, there's a massive responsibility to see it all out. I also felt like I was representing all my cousins as well, because like Rod and Maisie had 4 children and then 17 grandchildren. And that's us. We're the 17 grandchildren. And that gen's all gone. So this is us now, the grandchildren now. And I felt like I was representing their heritage as well, you know. And another interesting outcome, and I didn't really think a lot about it while I was doing it, was that there are a lot of the kids of missionaries, other missionaries who were at Mount Margaret have come along, and they've been going, it's so wonderful that the truth, you know, like I feel so emotional because like there were pictures there that were really familiar for them. And so it's kind of
healing for
Absolutely.
all of the missionaries' kids, not just us. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So, I didn't think about those guys. I was thinking about cousins more at the time. But, yeah. So, I was really touched by, the mission kids all turning up and
Wonderful.
being touched by it. Yeah. Because not a lot of people talk about what it is to be a missionary's kid. And particularly the kids who are missionaries to Aboriginal people back in the day. The country was quite racist back in the day, and we kids were like friends with all the Aboriginal people who were being rejected. So we got rejected because of that. And then when we grew to be adults, the missions were always the ones that were the problem. So we were rejected again for being missionaries' kids. So it was
trouble.
Double whammy, yes. So everyone just sort of went quiet, and I ran away. I didn't want to have anything to do with it for a long time. Yeah.
But this has been resurrected in you, and there's a sense of belonging. There's a sense of healthy pride.
I was always very proud of my parents and my grandparents.
Yeah.
But there were circles that I would choose not to mention that in. And for obvious
sometimes
reasons.
you have to do that.
But I did. I did identify, but I always identified very happily with Aboriginal people. I always knew that if there was a Holocaust and we all had to disappear and go out into the bush, I knew exactly where I'd go, because Aboriginal people still have those skills of being able to survive in the bush. They haven't lost those skills. And I felt very much like I would be accepted because of who I was. And family is very important in Aboriginal culture.
Absolutely.
You're in the family, you're in the family.
Yeah.
It's one of the beautiful things about their culture, actually.
Well, I pray that the story goes around the nation and it blesses many people, especially the Aboriginal.
I have a heart for that, to go around the nation, but I also think that this story is relevant to the world.
Absolutely.
Because, we hear stories about downtrodden cultures or first cultures being crushed and squashed and things all over the world. And I think that in that whole era, there were people. Mount Margaret's just one of them.
Yes.
There were people who did have a heart to do the right thing and could see beyond the politics of the day, and they did go and
they had the courage.
And they did have the courage to stand up, and they did do what they could do. They did their drop, but it's not necessarily recognised or acknowledged or known about.
That's right. And this comes and brings it to the forefront.
This is bringing it to the fore, that there really were people around back in the day who were the friend of Aboriginal people and had a heart for them and didn't see them as secondary citizens, which was really the opinion of the day.
Carol, thank you so much for sharing your story, and also I honor you for what you've done for your grandpa, for your parents, and for the community there. It's really beautiful.
Thank you for being interested.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't had the opportunity to watch it until now, look around. The production is coming your way. It's called A Drop in a Bucket. And that means, it's in the little things that we do every day that big things come out of. So do your drop as well. Even though it may seem insignificant or little, it has a massive effect in the higher context of things. If you love the story and you enjoy it, please share it with other people. We'd love for them to be connected and hear these amazing stories at Kingdom Stories from the Anandas. My name is Natanael Costea, and I hope to see you next week. Take care.
Thank you for joining us on Kingdom Stories from Down Under. We'd love it if you would subscribe, rate, and share these stories with your wider community. And remember, every story is worth sharing, including yours.